I'm trying to figure out which camera to look at, but this one's on. So, okay. This is just going to be as short as I can possibly make it and describe the extra credit project that you can do. It is voluntary over the Christmas holidays and up to the week of January 11, 12, and 14. Greek 1, Section A meets again on January 12, and Section 2 will meet again on January 14, Thursday evening at the regular time, 7 p.m. My wife and I will not be returning to campus until the end of February, until the beginning of the spring semester. And we've conferred with the administration, and they said they thought that was the best step for us. So I'm taking this opportunity to just make as short as possible a description of this project. Now, how much extra credit is this worth? It depends on the quality of your work. If it is really good, it could be as much as the midterm exam. Most probably will not be quite that high. I will be generous, but if you're going to just write some flowery notes, some nice words, repeat things that we know already, and not things that you're discovering from the text, then you won't get as much credit. If your sermon does not follow the required pattern, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, then again, you won't get as much credit. You may not get any if you don't follow instructions. So do follow instructions. I know that many want to get this extra credit, but it will take work. This is not a giveaway by any means. Okay. Now, at the same time, let me caution you that you do need to review your Greek grammar and your Greek vocabulary. In Greek 1, in both sections, we've only covered through chapter 5. On January 12 and 14, we will begin with chapter 6. We can't slow down because we need to be finished with part 1 of our textbook, which is chapter 11, by the end of the semester, which is coming up very soon in February. So we have basically the month of January to, and we start in the second week. And so we don't have much time to finish those chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So come back prepared to work, come back having reviewed on a regular basis. Please don't wait until Monday night or Wednesday night before class and try to review a month's worth of break. Enjoy your Christmas break. Enjoy your New Year break. You should, but you can every day enjoy also the learning Greek, which means simply reviewing vocabulary words. It's no problem to learn peripateo, I walk, and to know that the endings are peripato, peripates, peripate, peripatumen, peripatete, peripatusin, osa, omen, ete, usin, all except and two of those endings, the omen becomes umen because it's an epsilon omega verb, contract verb, and the ete in the second plural becomes eta because there's a contraction taking place. All right, I won't say any more about that. If you have any questions, you can ask our assistants, Mr. Masood and Ms. Zanaria, both MPhil students in Christian Studies, who have gone through this program before and are good students of the Greek New Testament, and they can certainly help you and tutor you. So take advantage of this time. Don't just let it go by. I know that pastors have a lot of duties during these holidays and preaching, but I hope that this study will even help you even more in your preaching over the Christmas holidays in particular. Now, I'm going to share with you, let's see, got to get the right one off up there. I should have done this before. I've been having trouble with video cameras, and I've been trying for 2 days now to get them to work, and finally managed to do so. And so that's one reason I didn't think to, I think I'm going to pause recording just a second. Okay, resuming recording. I'm going to share my screen with you, and what I'm going to show you is a bit of the Greek interlinear text for the passage I would like for you to study. And spotlight. This is called an interlinear. It's something I don't want students to use. I really don't, because this is a kind of crutch, you know, crutches you use to help walk. And you need to, with Greek, you need to throw those crutches away eventually. You need to come to the point that I'll show you later, that you can open the Greek New Testament and start reading with certainly the easier portions, like the Gospel of John and 1st and 2nd and 3rd John, and the book of Matthew in particular. You should be able to read those when we're finished with the 4th semester. The others, you will always need some helps, but you shouldn't need this help, the interlinear. But not, at this stage, we really have to use it in order to work with the Greek text. Now, when you see this interlinear, I'm going to tell you where you can go to. Actually, there are any number of places. You will probably discover some of your own. First is the, in this case, the new NRSV English translation here, in the time of King Herod after Jesus was born. Underneath is the Greek text as it appears in our, what we call NA28, the Nestle text, the most recent version. Right, and underneath that are the Greek words as they appear in the dictionary. For example, here we have a conjunction, de, and then we have in, and those look the same, but hemerais is actually a dative plural. When we get to chapter 6, very soon after we get back, you'll see this dative plural of what is actually a feminine word. Hemera means day. In the days, plural, N takes the dative case, and so this ending is ice. But underneath is the lexicon form, the dictionary form. So of the King Herod, and this is the form in the dictionary, ha basileus, it means the king. And this is the nominative form. So this is the nominative case form that we find in the lexicon, in the dictionary, and ha, Jesus. But this is the form in the New Testament, notice in the genitive case, tu Jesu. Jesus was born. This is a special kind of phrase, and that's the reason we're using an interlinear, because we don't get to these until Greek 3, the 3rd semester. and the fourth semester. So obviously, you don't know what to do with this genecentos, uh, but it means was born in Bethlehem of Judea. And then we have a word magoi, which is translated in most versions wise men. There's a tradition that they were kings, and it's those traditions that I want you to know about, recognize, and compare with what the Bible actually says, because there are many, many mistakes and misconceptions that people have about what happened at Christmas and how Jesus came into the world. Further, underneath the words, we have what we call the parsing, which you don't need to worry about now. This just says a nominative case and so on. And then there are two sets of numbers, and we'll see what we will do with those when we get to for example, billmounts.com, a free dictionary on the web that we can use. These numbers in particular are the ones that you want. These numbers are from a lexicon called Louw-Nida, which right now you probably won't be concerned with. But this is very helpful because we have 6 lines of information about the Greek text in this interlinear. This is a true interlinear. Some interlinears just have the English text and then they just set the Greek text underneath somewhere, but it doesn't really match usually with the English. But this one does, and it's very well done. So what I did, we're going to change to another, not that, let's see. I thought I had it open. I'm back. You probably didn't notice that I was gone. I'm going to share a screen again, different one slightly, and this is the page that you will see. And you notice that it has, on this side a CRST 271. So this is the same for both sections. And it has homework number 8X. 8 is the class, number 8 is the class that we'll have during the second week of January when we come back. And you don't have any homework for that class, so there won't be an HW8. Your job is simply to review. I probably should give you a homework assignment, but I wanted to give you this voluntary one instead. It says due 9th January at the latest. You need to turn it in immediately at the beginning, actually on the Saturday evening of the end of that week. And that's the latest that you can turn it in and get extra credit for it. I've taken that interlinear text that we just saw and I've placed it here on the left side of the page. And on the right side of the page, I've put notes. Now here I made a note also, interlinear Greek text available at hagiostech.com. So you can find a similar Greek text if you want to use your phones to work with. Especially since there are a lot of pages here on my paper, you don't have to print this out and use it this way if you don't want to. But I do want you to make notes here from things you discover here. So here you write down your discoveries, and here is where you find them. Even if you use your phones with hagiostech.com to get your Greek interlinear text, or if you use some other website, this is not the only one by any means. And by the way, I hope that you know this website. Let me share screen just a moment. It's called eSword, and It should be coming up in just a moment. Let me see. It's not there yet. So let's go back and share that screen. There it is. Okay. And if you notice here at the top on my screen here, um, I have several Bibles that I downloaded. It's all free. That they don't charge anything for it. It even has the ESV, and that's the one that I use the most. But I can find a text very quickly here, Genesis chapter 3, and then scroll down, and I have the ESV. It actually also has a Greek New Testament, which of course is not available in the Old Testament. But here is the Greek text of Matthew 1. It's kind of difficult because you don't, this is just the text and you don't have the interlinear, but I would highly recommend this, especially if you have a laptop. Now, if you're working from a phone, you'll need to get the Android version, which doesn't have quite all this information, doesn't have quite all of the commentaries. The commentaries themselves are all in the public domain, so they're older, but some of them are still very good and very useful. So this is a Bible study tool that you can add lots of information to. You can even make use of they have a window for making your own notes and so on. I'm just recommending this to you as particularly the ESV, the English Standard Version, which is a fairly new one, as a place to quickly move around in the English Bible. I don't think they have any foreign translations other than perhaps German, an old German Bible. And perhaps you know of others. Students are usually ahead of professors when it comes to things on the web in particular. Oh, sorry, always getting sidetracked. So let me share the screen again. Let's go back here. So what do you need to do? You need to study the text of Matthew 2, 1 to 18. And if you use these pages, you'll notice we have page 1 of 22. So if you actually print this out and use this, and I would be very happy if you do so, you would have 22 pages. And it takes so much simply because the interlinear takes a lot of room. And we also need place for the notes. I've also found that this interlinear text is tables, and it was very difficult to cut and paste. So some are larger or go out further this way, and some not so much. Here's more room for notes, and here's less room. The idea is to study the Greek text as much as you are able, and primarily to look up words and to discover what they mean, and to make notes about it here, and then at the end to write a sermon. So let me just again say, what kind of notes do you want to make? Well, whatever you discover. And the first thing I would highly recommend to you is to work through the text and look at the Greek words underneath and see if you recognize any of them. You certainly will recognize this little preposition, for example. And Paul, here is another one that you will recognize from the East. And notice the genitive case here, the genitive plural. So just go through here first and see, oh, okay, I recognize words, and maybe make a note here. This is just basic stuff, but it might come in helpful later. We'll notice that austera or austere is the dictionary form of the word star in Greek. And austere, astronomy, Oh, again, we see a lot of Greek words in our modern English words. So that's the first thing. Work through the text. Secondly, make let's go down. Once you've gone through and made notes of your own, I've given you the second. We've got note in the text where you think there should be a paragraph change. Now, you say, well, why is that significant? It's very significant because very often we don't really study what is the biblical author trying to say to us. We don't ask ourselves, why did he leave out this information and put in other information? Or the information that I would like to know, for example. Why didn't he tell us more about where these Magoi came from, or about their return journey? Did Herod's men catch up with them? We don't know. He doesn't tell us. It doesn't satisfy our curiosity because that's not what God wants to tell us. So one way that it helps us to concentrate on what the text is saying is to make paragraphs. Now, you don't have to go through here, although actually you could, it wouldn't be wrong, and say, right here, I indicate a paragraph change because there's a change in topic. But another way, actually, that you will notice a change in paragraph is often this little word de. Now, obviously, when we have when, we have a little change in emphasis when Herod saw he had been tricked, and the Greek word for tricked is here underneath. A topic change might be a paragraph change, or it might not. Certainly, if I go back to the beginning real fast, or right up to the top, here there is a paragraph change because this preposition, not preposition, conjunction, de. If you look it up in the lexicon, it will only say and or but. But we already have kai and Allah, and or but. We don't actually need necessarily another word that just means and or but. And de doesn't really just mean and or but. It means more a little change in emphasis, sometimes a change in topic, sometimes even a change in paragraph. Now that's a matter of interpretation. You might ask, which one is it? What is it doing here? Well, here there is definitely a change in paragraph because the previous paragraph was about Joseph and his dream and the birth of Jesus. And here, and what his name should be called. But here we have de now, and I like to translate de as now most of the time. I really don't like the translation moreover, but some lexicons have it, and it can fit. It's really better than and or but because de is a conjunction that we say develops the text. It doesn't just join sentences together. It pushes the story forward. Now and this time, and now this, now look at this. So if you have de, you'll notice there's maybe a paragraph change, or at least a change in emphasis, maybe even a change in the subject. Another thing that's important to notice is when we have a behold, which in many English translations is being left out. And it's the little word edu in Greek. And let me scroll down here. I'm not seeing it, but well, we'll eventually see it in the text. Edu, behold, look here, focus on this. It's an author's way of saying, I want you to notice this. And I find it very unfortunate that many modern English translations just say, well, we don't use behold nowadays, so we don't translate this. It's there in the text. God put it there for a reason. And so, yes, behold is too old. It's old English. We don't say, behold. Well, you didn't get up this morning and say to your mother, behold, I am hungry. Where is my chapati for breakfast or whatever? No. But we do say, look here. When something's happening, I want you to see this. And that is why we need to look very carefully when God says, do. Look, focus. Or in the old translations, King James, behold. So make notes here of things that become important. And then as you read commentaries, and I don't mind if you read commentaries, I really would like for you to read and think first yourself about what the text says. Don't get used to just going to commentaries first. But in commentaries, you'll get other ideas. So just put all those notes over here in this column. And note where you think there is a change in paragraphs. Let's go back down. So where in the text do you think there should be a paragraph change? And I talk about de and kai and Allah here, the conjunctions. Second thing, in Moodle, I have posted the sermon, the link to the sermon by Tim Keller on Matthew 2, 1 to 12. Now I'm going to ask you to listen to two sermons, both by Westerners, because I'm more familiar with Western preachers. I hope to get to know others in Asia, more of them. I know some have been in with time, but I just use these. Tim Keller was the pastor of Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City, in Manhattan, until recently. And he's retired. He actually has pancreatic cancer, and many people are praying for him right now. A very gifted man of God, as you will notice when you listen to him. I would like for you to listen to his message. Note any Greek words in the text that he explains. Now, he says a lot about the magoi, the wise men. He will say, well, there were certainly more than 3. There were at least 30 of them, because they would have had guards. Nobody's going to go to Herod the Great with just 3 people. That's a dangerous man, Herod the Great. And so I'm thinking they probably had a little private army, militia that went with them. The idea that there was just 3 of them is from the 3 gifts that they brought, gold and frankincense and myrrh, but that really doesn't follow. And the idea that they were kings, the text says magoi, and your job is to find out, or what exactly were magoi. Now, Dr. Keller will give you some really good explanations, and you'll get some more in the second message over here, Reverend Joshua Knott. But I've asked you some questions first. There are 2 columns here, by the way. Note any Greek words in the text he mentions and what he says about them. Any questions you have about his sermon, any points of interest you think, this is particularly interesting, and any points where you disagree. This is hard for students, I've noticed at FC College. I disagree with this, but I really want you to learn to disagree. We have to learn to think. So reflect on what someone says, compare it to the text, and decide, I'm not sure this is quite right. You will find commentators disagree, different opinions about something in the Bible. And the Greek text won't necessarily explain the answer. There may be other reasons why for their interpretation, but I just want you to do some basic study here. I want you to listen to a very typical Western sermon, Western style. Point one, point two, point three. He doesn't have a poem at the end. That is the caricature is often said. If you want a sermon point, you have 3 points and a poem. There's no poem in his messages usually. Lots of quotes, which, by the way, shows us something. It shows us we can use outside sources. We can put them in our sermons. We just have to give credit. If we don't give credit, if we pass off words that are not ours, but somebody else's, we are doing what they call plagiarize. And if you plagiarize, if I can Google any part of your sermon afterwards and find that you're just quoting somebody else, but you didn't say who it was, we might get 0 on this project. So make sure that your work is your own. I'll say that again in just a moment. The second thing is to listen and watch the sermon on Matthew 2, 1 to 12. It won't cover the whole section, but you can actually listen to the second one this coming after this coming Sunday, and I'm not sure what Reverend Joshua is going to do, Reverend Knott, but this is the passage he preached on last Sunday. This is our church that we attend here in South Carolina. Try and post the file on Moodle. Right now, I've just left the link to the Cornerstone website. If you have trouble getting to this church website and listening to this sermon, let me know. Or let Masood know, and that's better, and he and I will work this out. So from the message from this past Sunday from Reverend Knott, what more did you learn about the Magoi, the wise men? About Herod the Great, Herodo to Basilos, in Bethlehem of Judea. What comes up in the sermon about that? And worship, the infinitive form of proskuneo. You should know this verb. You won't know this form of it, but you should know this verb from chapter 5. Proskuneo, I worship. I fall down prostrate. Yeah, but it's not so much the, pros, you can already sense the movement, proskuneo, fall down, but doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to worship that way. So worship is a more simple translation. Infinitive form to worship. We have come to worship him. Think about it. Why do you think that Matthew emphasizes this verb, worship? Why didn't he just say, we have come to see him? We have come to visit him. We have come because we have read the ancient prophecies. I've asked you some questions here about Reverend Knott's text, and again, you can just answer them. You may find this one a little difficult. At the end is a quote from the book of Jeremiah, and Jeremiah is actually quoting from Genesis. So Genesis, Jeremiah, Matthew. That shows us something interesting, that the Bible builds on itself. This story is the basis for this story, which is the basis for this story, and then ask us questions about today if we study how these stories relate together. But very often we don't study how they relate together. We just say some words about them and go on, and I don't want you to do that. So everything that you can find about how these preachers explain the text, and I will assure you that both of them have studied the Greek text in their preparation for their sermons. It won't be so easy to figure out where the Greek text comes into play. Here, perhaps it's easier with Reverend Not, but because they did, a lot of background information comes in that they learned from doing that. And your last job, well, actually, after you have listened to both of these sermons and made notes here, I would like you to come back here to the text and again add comments. What did you learn about the magoi? In the proper place next to the text where it appears, the words magoi. What else did you learn? What did you learn from commentaries? What did you learn from dictionaries? Anything that you can find. And by the way, eSword has a lot of commentaries that are very helpful. They're old in the public domain, but still helpful. And finally, your last job is to write a 2 or 3 page sermon about Matthew 2, 1 to 18. And here, if you just write nice words, if you just write what you think I might want to hear, you're not going to get much credit. If you really work here, if you do what I ask, and here's what I ask, write 2 or 3 page maximum. I don't want to read 16 pages, please. So this is not the whole sermon. If you are going to preach for an hour, and I really would like for you to be able to use this in your church. You may not be able to, or maybe you can teach or teaching children. That would be wonderful. Because I want you to write this in story form. Reverend Knott teaches in story form. He didn't know it last Sunday, and I went up to him and I said, "Did you know that you just preached in the Eastern form? You told the story. Like Jesus tells many, many stories to get his point across. Jesus told many stories. Now, he taught other things too. He taught the words that his disciples had to memorize. And they had to memorize the whole New Testament. That's why we have it. But Jesus taught with stories. And Reverend Knott does it in story form. Now, you'll notice that, I'm always thinking I'm looking into the camera and talking to you when I'm actually not. And now I am. When you tell this story, bring in as much background information as you can. And notice how Reverend Knott in particular, but both pastors, bring in this background information that informs the text for them. And with that information, they share that with the people, and then they apply it. Now, Reverend Keller is in New York City, and he has educated people, doctors, lawyers, businessmen, men and women from Wall Street. If you've heard of Wall Street, it's the economic center, one of the economic centers in our United States. He has those kinds of people, or had in his church in New York City, still does. Actually, these churches have spread all over the East Coast of the United States and even into some foreign countries. But it's a different audience. And some of you are teaching, for example, in villages in near Lahore or around Lahore or in Lahore. And your people may not be quite as educated as that. So when you bring something out, you don't want to say, for example, well, if you think these were wise men, you're wrong, because that's not what they were. And well, if they have had a long tradition of thinking that, well, these were, for example, kings, and there were 3 of them, and you just come and say, I'm the smart one, and I can tell you that there were only just 3 kings. There were more, certainly more, and there were. but that's not a very nice way to treat it. And it also makes people uncertain about their Bibles. What, hopefully, it would make them go back and read their Bibles. But we want to do it in a way that is more kind, more like Jesus, more in his way. We need to correct. The Bible is there for correction. 2 Timothy 3:15 and 16. Bible is given, inspired for correction. So we want to correct their misconceptions. We have to. Uh, Many times they have in mind that the shepherds came, and then the same evening the wise men come, and there are three of them, and they bring gifts, and they come to the crib. Well, that's wrong, because they come much later. Jesus was in a house, we are told, oikos. Mary and Joseph had settled in a house. Joseph doesn't want his wife to be subject to the ridicule that was certainly her whole life she would have, because they would never accept if she told them an angel appeared to me and the child in me was from the Holy Spirit. You think most people believe that? Of course not. So she was always a woman who had to bear the stigma. So I'm sure that Joseph stayed away, and he didn't want to even go back to Nazareth when he comes back from Egypt. But it seems he has no choice, because he finds that the son of Herod is worse than or bad as Herod himself when he comes back from Egypt. So but there are many things that people need to understand in order to understand the story correctly. So that's why I want you to listen to these two pastors and understand how what a good sermon looks like in the West. And I think Reverend Joshua Knott gives us an example of how it looks in the East in a story form. But notice that he will also always say, I imagine it's like this. Now, his imagining comes from background study in the text. He's not just imagining it from anywhere. He has studied commentaries, he has studied the background, but he makes a difference between, well, I imagine it could be like this and what the Bible text says. So when you tell this story in story form, make sure that what you tell them comes out of the Bible, and you're not just reading it into the Bible, or where you're adding details that the Bible doesn't mention. You tell them, well, these details, and because of this, I think this was what happened. So that the people know the difference between the Bible text itself and perhaps your thoughts about it. The other thing I'll be looking for is application. Dr. Keller is preaching to New York City people. Reverend Knott is preaching to people in the South of the United States and here in South Carolina. Now, these are also educated people, but not quite like New York City. And also very conservative in many ways. And he never attacks their conservative beliefs. I don't want to go into those. What do I mean by conservative? You can look that up yourself about conservative Americans and conservative evangelicals. But your context in Pakistan is much different. You don't want to talk about necessarily cars moving around or things that people don't have. But you will still need to talk about materialism being a god, and that we need to worship Jesus alone, that Jesus is God's son and we must worship him. We have no choice. I want to see how you think about this text and how it applies to your people, your culture. So I want you to think clearly. So that's another part of what I will be looking for. Story form, but in the process of the story, explain who the so-called wise men are, the magoi. Notice how Dr. Keller compares them to all the wise men of our day, all the politicians, the leaders, the newspaper people. They were that of their day. Um, so, who are they in your country, in your city, in your village? Who are those wise people? Who are the people who know everything, who have the power, for example? Who are the people who have some idea about the scriptures? These men had some about the scriptures. Notice the difference between that Matthew is trying to show us these Gentiles came to worship Jesus, but John 1:11, the people in Judea, he came into his own and his own did not receive him. And we need to tell the people in our churches that there are many sitting there who are not really Christians. They're not really worshiping Jesus. They just want to come to church to hear a nice story. So our story must challenge them, and it must certainly contain the gospel. So because if we come to worship Jesus, why to worship Jesus? Because he came to die and rise again from the dead for us. We have to connect this with the cross and the resurrection. So I'll be looking for that too. That's the real center of all that we should be talking about. So I hope that this is helpful. And if you have, like I said, if you have questions, please relate them to Masood, and he will kind of collect them. And so then we can talk about them together and how to explain them. I hope that, like I said, I hope that many of you actually use this study and this text in some form during the holidays and share the gospel through it in proclaiming it to others. Again, extra credit as much as your work shows that you have really followed instructions and really worked on this text. So have a great time, and let me pray for you on this all as we finish. Lord, I ask you to bless my fellow disciples and help them to learn your words and to be able to share it clearly with others. We pray that the children in the audience will understand clearly what they're talking about and what it means to us in the name of Christ. And help the children to come to you and to give their lives to you. In Jesus' name, amen. So, I probably talked much longer than I wanted to, but I hope this helps you understand the project.